So I'm Cara, a deputy news editor at the Boar, and this is Ollie. We're interviewing for your position as welfare and companions officer in the spring officer election. So I'll get straight into the questions. We've got 7 questions to go through. My
Mhm.
first one is, what are your key priorities?
So I've got four priority policies that I'd like to work on next year. The first one is fighting to change Roots Grocery into a more affordable shop for students. The second is to compile a report into rent prices and rises on campus, and then use that report to kind of lobby the university for a better deal for students. The third is to make the free breakfast club daily. And then the fourth is to subsidise bus passes for disadvantaged students at Warwick.
Right, that sounds really good. So we'll move on to our next question. How will you seek to improve mental health and wellbeing provisions on campus?
Yeah, so I'm very passionate about doing so. I think there's a lot of great people at Warwick, and I've said this before. I'm not trying to kind of suggest that any work that is being done is not great, because I've been to wellbeing. I know that they're great and they're really good at their jobs. But I think with things like report and support, for example, um, people's mental health is being massively impacted by the fact that they're not being listened to. So I've got loads of friends that have had horrific experiences with kind of sexual violence. Trigger warning, I apologise. And one of the biggest things I've seen is how bad their mental health is affected, because the current existing things that are meant to help you in the first place aren't good enough. So I'd like to reform report and support by bringing in an external review and also consulting student groups. Um, I'd also like to introduce more professionally led support groups for students on campus. So for people with various experiences, that could be things like addiction. Again, it could be kind of sexual violence. It could be um, I've forgotten the word I'm looking for. But yeah, those kind of things. Basically, I think it's important to have a community and feel heard, especially when they're professionally led. As much as that's important, and that is a key part of those support groups, it's also important to have people there with you that you can actually relate to. So I'd like to introduce more things like that as well.
Definitely, that sounds really good, Ollie. So next we've got, are there any ways you think the end period poverty campaign could be further improved or enhanced?
So I think that it's a fantastic campaign, one of the best, by far best campaigns I've seen from the SU in my time here. As far as I'm aware, the SU and the director of the SU are now entrenching that so that it can go beyond successive FTO teams, and I think that's amazing. But I think that also gives us a real opportunity, whilst we're crafting what that may look like as it becomes a more permanent fixture, we can expand it. And basically, I think it should be in every toilet on campus. I think we should be spreading it as far as we can. I think the branding around it has been fantastic already, but again, letting more people know about it, whether that means more advertisement around campus or improving the way that looks. So yeah, basically pushing it and expanding it as far as we can to get it in every toilet on campus, I think is very important.
Yeah, great, great. So how would you ensure the welfare of students that may be suffering through the current cost of living crisis?
Yeah. So as you can tell from my four priorities, that's kind of what I'm most passionate about. I think that the base level of ability you have to deal with any welfare issue is massively impacted by the cost of living crisis. If you don't have any money, that causes stress. You know, we as students know that, and especially if you're from like a working class background, you don't have money. If you don't have money, you're already stressed, and then something else comes along. How are you meant to deal with that? So yeah, that's why I want to do the and work on the four priority policies I had. So obviously making routes cheaper, compiling the report into rent prices and using that to lobby for a better deal, making the free breakfast club daily so that people always have a guaranteed meal if they need to in the day, if they're hungry or they can't afford food, and then also subsidising the bus passes, because stagecoach bus passes for a year, £410, I believe it was this year. Where are you getting 400 quid from as a working class student? You don't just have 400 quid. You can take out your student loan, but then you've got nothing else left for food. And that's at least what could be 6 weeks worth of food there. So yeah, subsidising bus passes is another one I'm really passionate about.
Great, yeah, definitely. Next we've got, Are there any ways by which student safety could be further improved or prioritised by the Students' Union?
So one of my pledges in my manifesto as well is I want to separate the welfare responsibilities of community safety or campus security from their security responsibilities. So I have a really distinct memory in my first year of one of my good friends was having a really rough time, and we had to call community safety to come and help us. And at one point, and I heard this on the night, basically what was said is, can you just say that you're okay so we can go? So I don't think these people are fit to be acting as a welfare service on campus. And that's why I think if we're going to expect them to hold that role, then we need to separate that, get different staff, or at least have those staff properly trained. Because at the minute, it's not community safety, it's just campus security. And I think most people know that. I mean, I very rarely hear people call them community safety around campus. So I think that needs to be massively improved. I also think the report and support thing that I mentioned earlier is another way I'd like to do that. I'd like to work with the VP for Societies and Sports to introduce mandatory welfare training for social secretaries. Now that's obviously all of a sudden it can kind of spur on, is he trying to make circling not fun? Is he going to ruin circles? Is he going to ruin pub nights? Bar club nights, sorry. No, I'm not. What I'm trying to say is if something happens at a circle, too many times you hear about it not getting properly dealt with. And I think you can't really just be blaming the social sector, because yes, societies have welfare officers, but how can you guarantee that a welfare officer is going to be at an event? How can you guarantee they're going to be sober? So I think it's important that those people that are in charge of social on campus are better trained. Yeah, that's a couple of the things I touch on that point.
Great, yeah, definitely. We have covered this slightly already, but if you want to reiterate anything or expand on anything, we're just asking about what campaigns you would seek to run over the next year. Obviously, you spoke about the bus passes
Yeah.
and everything like that, but if you want to expand on anything, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously don't just want to bang on about my four priorities, but I think if I was lucky enough to win, they are the areas that I want to focus on. So, yeah, genuinely fighting to change Roots Grocery. There's so many pledges over. I think I looked at campaign videos from 10 years ago, and it literally starts with, I want to change Roots Grocery into a cheaper shop. But I think we're at a point where the economy is so bad, students are struggling so much that there's more appetite for that than ever. Sorry. So I want to use that anger of students. I want us to mobilise, fight, show the uni why we want it. So that would be one of my priorities. And then again, compiling that report that I spoke about. So I'd like to spend a good amount of time genuinely researching. I'd like to speak to the NUS about how they rank affordability of accommodation on campus and compare how it is at Warwick. And then I want to use that, and I want to use the surveys of students and the research I find, and I want to take it to the higher ups at the uni and say, listen, either look at this report and act, or look at this report, and if you're not going to act, then you've got a lot of justification to give to students, because this report is going to be seen around campus. And then again, yeah, it's an existing campaign, but the Free Breakfast Club, I think it's fantastic, but I'd like to make it every day. So that we can make sure that people that perhaps can't afford food, and to some students that sounds like a completely other world, but I know for a fact there are students on campus that cannot afford food, or at the very least they could maybe get a meal a day, and that's not enough. How are you meant to go to your classes and genuinely get the most out of this degree if you can't afford your breakfast in the morning? So I'd like to offer that up as well. And then obviously, as you mentioned, the bus passes, yeah, subsidies.
Great, thanks for expanding on that a bit more. We've just got one final question for you. What do you think makes you stand out from other welfare officer candidates?
Um, I think from what I know of the other candidates, and it's a very encouraging thing, we have a lot of overlap in our policies. We do. And I think that's great, because it means obviously the things I'm passionate about hopefully should be kind of acted upon, no matter what. And that's fantastic. And I think ultimately student life at Warwick should get better from this next officer team. I think what separates me is I've got a lot of experience in the SU. And I always hate talking about like what you've done, because it comes across like you're trying to like brag, and I'm not that kind of person. But I sat on the welfare committee. So I've worked with the former VP for Welfare and Campaign, so I know about that. I know how the committee works. I know what a lot of responsibilities for the job are. I sat on steering group, so I know the SU democratic structures really well too. And obviously, you're going to be interacting with them a lot because that's how you get your changes pushed through a lot of the time. So I know how to navigate them really well. I've also sat on student council, so I know how to deal with those council meetings, how to get the change you want to made. And also, I've worked with people from different forums because all those people sit on council. And I was also lucky enough to be elected as the chair of student council this year. So I've managed to have a relationship with the board of trustees. I've got more insight into them. And then also, I actually worked in the SU for a year as a part-time staff member. I was a membership assistant in the student voice or the democracy team. So I think one thing I believe I have over all the candidates is a different understanding of the SU. A lot of the way students generally interact with the SU is from as a student going in and basically talking for a couple of minutes, then leaving or trying to get your form sorted. Whereas I've formed relationships with the staff. I know how their jobs work quite well. I ran things like the elections this year, last year, union awards, minuted a lot of meetings, organised a lot of meetings and SSLC forms. So I believe I have a very good understanding of the SU, and I believe that understanding of the SU should help me push the change through that I want to achieve. And yeah, sorry to have listed all the things I've done. And it's not something
No,
I'm
that's
really
great.
comfortable doing, but yeah.
Amazing, yeah. So that's all the questions we've got for you. Thank you very much for answering them all so
No
in
problem.
depth. Again, this is Ollie running for welfare and campaigns in the spring officer elections. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Cara. Thank you.